Andy, you will start first, yeah? So I will pin your video. So I'm introduced to you, Andy Mereuta, one new face and really talented photographer. So I think the big stuff are coming your way from her. So please introduce.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'm so honored to see you and to have you here with us. Thank you for finding the time. So I'm going to share the screen. Okay. Okay. Here it goes. We're just jumping in. So I'm Andriana Mereuta, and I'm originally from Moldova, but I live in the United States now. And just to speak a little bit about this project that I'm exhibiting next year at FOTORAMA. So it's about my home country, Moldova, and it's a project that really explores the culture, the tradition, the diversity, the landscape, and the daily life of Moldovan people. A little bit about the country. It's a small country, post-Soviet country in Eastern Europe. Most of you probably know about it. It's bordered by Ukraine in the east and by Romania in the west. And it has about 2.6 million people as the population, which is an approximate 1 million people less than a decade ago. And so the main reason for this migration is the search for economic opportunities. And why is this important? This project inevitably, this economic migration inevitably affects the preservation and the transmission of Moldovan tradition, and is one of the main reasons for this project. So before this body of work turned into a conscious storytelling project, it really started as I really started photographing my family and friends every time I would visit them in the summer months. And these are my parents, my father, who is a winemaker. He's turning ripe fruit into hard liquor in this image. And so these are really daily life moments of my parents. These are my godsons. They were playing instruments for me. The last time I've seen them before this moment, they were toddlers. So, as I said, I was just taking pictures of my family in the beginning. And then eventually I decided I didn't really know how to take photography to the next level. So I enrolled into a class at the Art Institute, and that class turned into 3 years of training. And I assisted many different photographers from different specialties, from food to architecture to fashion to editorial portraiture and photojournalism, and I learned a lot of things that contributed to my tool set, but at the same time I learned what wasn't for me. So around the same time I was introduced to the work of Sebastian Salgado, and for those of you who don't know him, he's a social documentary photographer whose work I really admire, and that kind of set the direction for what I wanted to explore with my photography. And after I finished school, I reached out to the United Nations in Moldova, and I offered to collaborate with them on their stories. So we started photographing different stories on the preservation of cultural values, different economic opportunities that they were creating at home, so people didn't have to migrate. We documented the changes that happen in the culture. So, for example, this image is a typical room in any family in rural Moldova, and what people used to do, they would make this beautiful gifts to transmit to their daughters when they get married. But now, since youth is not as interested in living the same way as their parents did. All these beautiful things are just donated to museums and are becoming like national patrimony in a way, so other maybe tourists could see them and remember what Moldova used to be like. So working with UN really gave me this edge, or this new perspective on seeing my own country that I was not aware of. And because we were traveling all over the country and being exposed to all this nuances of my culture that I didn't know about. So this project really turned into a more conscious project after really working with Erika more closely. I'm tremendously inspired by her work and Lynn and all the beautiful photographers in National Geographic. And I really understood that for me to really develop my potential as a storyteller and also my vision and my voice, I really had to go back to my own story and learn how to tell it well. So this is the initial stage of this project, but so I went back last year in 2019. That's when it really started. To document one of the most celebrated holidays in Moldova, which is Easter. So these ladies are wearing traditional clothing, and they were preparing for the Easter Sunday, and they got together to instruct the next generation of young children in a way to preserve and transmit something they knew from their elders. So I photographed Easter from different aspects, the Holy Mass at the church, families at home, and so the young girls were learning how to do this. And these are the young children who are celebrating Easter the pagan way, or they're making a campfire and trying to scare the spirits away, the bad spirits. This is a family reunion that unfortunately is not as often, especially during these holidays. People come back from abroad only in the summer months when they have vacation. So they become more rare. And then in the summer, I traveled back home to spend more time with my family. This is my mother. So my family is really the centerpiece of this project, because I'm realizing how important and how transient things are, and these images will mean a lot to me down the line. We continue to photograph different cultural values of my country expressed in still life, and these are 3 generations nightgowns embroidered by the women in the same household. They belong to each generation of women, and they were given again at the night of their wedding day as a gift. And this is not happening anymore in our culture. And this is a community meeting after a celebration at the church, which is the place for most people in rural Moldova to get together and connect. So traditional carpets with historic and cultural motifs, and they really embed the values and the meaning of values for that are some artisans and artists in Moldova trying to bring back and revive. And this is a wedding, a traditional wedding in Moldova, and this particular young people work abroad, but they come to Moldova. They came to Moldova to have a traditional wedding, and many young people do that to this day. And just a baptism, how it's a traditional way in Moldova. And for me, it's like this set of images, or the project itself, is a way to tell a different story about Moldova, the way I see it and the way it's meaningful to me, and hopefully in showing this work abroad, some people will find interest in learning about our culture as well. And this is parents visiting their son's grave during the Remembrance Day. It's celebrated a week after Easter. So this is a birthday. Again, this kind of celebrations are less and less celebrated in the family when everybody's home. But on this occasion, there were a lot of family members together. First day of school. And I think for me, this project maybe didn't make sense as a project at first, because I'm so used to the things I grew up with that in some way we are dismissing it. And sometimes it's good to go back and try to see the same settings in a new way, the new eyes, and kind of discover your own culture in a new way. This is some portraits of people, like, to me, the people who are still living in Moldova, and especially in the rural Moldova, who never left. For me, they're the true heroes, and I really want to show the dignity that they have, even though they live, their life is not as easy, but they're the people who carry on the culture and the tradition and the things that are so valuable about our history. So I just really want to bring some dignity to their way of life, even if they don't see it that way. Some still life. Traditional occupations. Farming is the most practiced occupation for people in villages, because they depend on their livestock and for their own survival, but also for a livelihood. And because the pensions and the salaries are really not enough for them to live on. And as many as maybe of you know, Moldova is the wine country, and it's agricultural, and winemaking is one of the most often most predominant occupation. Every family is making wine in the fall. Moldova is known for its wines around the world, and this is a particular picture portrays a way of making wine that is no longer is kind of vanishing, because all these processes are replaced by modern technologies. So this man is crushing grapes by foot. He's wearing rubber boots, by the way. And and this is mostly happening in the south of the country. This project also explores the diversity of our culture, the different ethnicities living within the country. Our history traces back from the Ottoman Empire, when Moldova was a vassal of the Ottoman Empire in the 19th century, and then it was part of Romania, and then it was part of the Russian Empire. So we have all this rich cultural heritage that comes from all these countries in some way. We have the Gagauz people, which are ethnically Turks, but they have Christian faith. And we have the Russians, and in this particular picture, they are the representatives of all believers. They're Russians. They fled Russia in the 17th century, being persecuted by the Soviet authorities for their faith. So this is the leader of their community, and is the last such community living in Moldova. So last year I just was able to make a contact with them, but I didn't really go in depth, so I want to photograph them more. The Gagauz people, as I said, the Ukrainians are the second largest ethnic groups. I didn't photograph yet, but but I will. And the Roma people, another ethnic group, and they trace their origins from the Romanian Empire, and they're heavily stigmatized for their culture in some way. And a lot of families are trying to break away from that stigma, and trying to really wanting to focus more on education versus early marriage. And this image is a young mother. She's about 20, breastfeeding her child. And this is her niece, 18-year-old, who developed a passion for foreign languages and who aspires to go to the university one day and have a different life. So there are groups of people who are marginalized in various ways in Moldova. This is a 33-year-old girl with Down syndrome, and she's fully dependent on her mother, who is 80, and she has no other caregiver or family in case something were to happen to her mother. And it's just the reality of how people with such disabilities sometimes are treated, even though there are many improvements and many efforts to address these challenges Moldova is facing. So her mother is very religious, and she prays for them to pass together, so her daughter doesn't have to live in one of the asylums for people with disabilities out of concern for her well-being. And then there are people whose gender identity doesn't fit with the society's views and norms. This young lady identifies as a non-binary, and she is seen as not feminine enough for a woman in Moldova, and oftentimes she has to mask in some ways her identity in order to be included and accepted. So I just photograph these things that matter to me, the people that I really want to see and show the world in a different light than it's perceived now currently in Moldova. And so my family is still at the centerpiece of this project, because these are moments of daily life, as simple as they may look, but this is what we truly remember about our home, and they become part of us. So in closing, I just want to address the word mnemonic that holds the meaning of this body of work. And it has its origin in the 18th century from the Greek word mnemon, and it means mindful. So it presumes really a system of letters, of ideas, of associations, and in this case, a collection of images that assists us in remembering something. And in the context of this project, the visual documentation of these national treasures of culture, tradition, diversity, landscape, and way of life is a way to memorize and honor our origins and our national identity, to pay respects to our ancestors and our past, to acknowledge who we are, who we were, and who we continuously become because of it. So this is all I wanted to show you today, and thank you so much for your attention. Back to you, Marco.
Thank you so much. So you have, if I can, you have one question, if that is okay,
yes,
from
sure.
Alexander. How much time do you spend with people to have them willing to share their private moments? Could you tell a bit about Beyond Prejudice project?
So how much time? Honestly, not enough yet. I wish I could spend more time, and this project so far, I just spent a few days at a time. But I'm planning, as I develop this project, to actually go and spend more extensive time with them, because I really feel the real essence comes through trust, through building trust and coming back again and again. So you start seeing new things and understanding better, really. And about the prejudice project, I'm trying to, I just came to a realization lately that I'm trying not to bring my own views and judgments, but really allow people to kind of tell their stories, and so I could be as more of an observer, and yes, have an opinion, but not to get too entangled with that. So for now, I want to document their experience and understand them better, and just photograph what I feel inherently called to do. And I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Erika, it's your turn.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Marco, thank you. This is so great to be here. I wish it was in person, but we have
next year.
Yeah, I was going to say we have a whole year to lead up to in person. That's probably way more than enough. So, but yeah, thank you so much. Okay, I'll just get started with mine. I'm going to share the screen, and I'm just going to close off the chat here so I don't see it. Let's share the screen. So, for my part of the project, so I'm going to actually, we've kind of decided we have about 20 minutes or so to speak. So I have a lot of work, and I'm going to stop at 20 minutes. And I planned it this way because the idea is that we're going to be exhibiting this work next year in Serbia. So I really just want to take us a little bit on a journey about what's actually the potential of what I'm going to be showing next year. So this is a project I've been calling an exploration of ritual. And this probably started in 2006 to begin with. And the idea was to look at ritual and how ritual helps us describe our connection to what it means to be nature, and the sort of world around us, right? We use ritual as a way for us to engage with the world around us, but also for us to communicate about the world around us. It's its own language. And it started for me because back in, a few years ago, I kept hearing people talk about the idea that we're going to come into an age where we'll begin to all learn a new language. And this language isn't maybe something that's going to be spoken, but it's going to be a language of symbols. And it's not necessarily even a new language. It's a language that we're going to be remembering. So that's kind of been in my sphere over the years. And so I started to look at areas that had communities that had strong relationships to the natural world, and asking them to show me, what did this mean? What did this kind of idea of this new language look like? So in 2006, I went to Peru, and I've been working there maybe now almost, 2000, whatever, how many years that is, you guys can do the math, 14, 15 years. And I've been returning to many of the same places, but my journey started in the rainforest. And I'm starting with this image because something I'm realizing, and I want to talk about through the image process, is that a lot of times I'm creating these images, but I realize that I need 5, 10, 15 years to even understand what the image is showing me. So for instance, I would get this kind of image, and I'm realizing that now when I start to look at all the regions that I'm about to show you, there's always like a gatekeeper. There's always a person that sort of is the the keeper of the world that they're about to show you. And you never know who that's going to be. Perhaps it's a child, perhaps it's an elder, perhaps it's not. But there's always somebody that's about to take you down the rabbit hole. And intuitively, I have to find that person. And so sometimes, actually, that image comes at the end and not in the beginning. And that's what I'm beginning to realize, that as we're learning this new language of symbols, that the idea of time existing in a linear pattern doesn't exist anymore. So that we begin to break our ideas of linear space and realize that the past could be the future, but the future maybe is just our remembering of the past. And so that's why I often need 5, 10, 15, 20 years to begin to understand the pictures, because they're not coming at me in a linear way. This is a group called the Chapibo. And again, I met them first in 2006, and I've probably gone back maybe 5 times now. This woman here, the first time I went, I photographed her mother, Erlinda, who has since died. And now she's taken on the role of Erlinda. And the importance about the Chapibo is they have a belief in these, in the anaconda, or the snake, which is ultimately Ayahuasca, which is ultimately the female healer, which is ultimately the makeup of our DNA. And so if you actually could look at the way that our DNA structure is made up, it exists in these kine patterns of the ayahuasca and of the healer and of us as people. So the idea is that these things that we're looking outside of ourselves to heal is actually just us to begin with. But sometimes it's like a bit broken apart, the way the patterns can work sometimes. So it's that we have to remember the pattern of who we are to become more whole again in that way. And so these patterns are things that they're old patterns that are remembered, and they're patterns that can be sung. And so many Chapibo know many of these songs that are called ikoros. And the songs can manifest themselves in these physical symbols, but they're actually also just replicas of the nature. So if we see here on the right-hand side, this is the vine of the ayahuasca, which actually is very similar to the patterns. And they look back at the ayahuasca, which then mirrors the snake, and they say the snake actually holds all the patterns of the possibilities of the patterns. And so here on the back of the boy here, the young boy, they put these different patterns on as signs of protection, signs of healing. So it's constantly paying reverence to the outside, but also to our inside, because we're constantly self-reflective and paying reverence to ourselves, because when you honor yourself, you're also honoring nature and all the possibilities that can be, and ultimately the existence of the universe. And so this woman here, she's an elder in the community. She's actually the mother of Erlinda, the woman that I told you had died. So she's the grandmother of that first woman we just saw. And so she's wearing a shawl here. And so these are her private ikaros. These are her interpretations of her healing songs. And she can actually sing all of these songs that she's wearing. And I just want us to listen to one moment to what that sounds like. So again, it's this idea that, right, so something is, and then it can manifest itself physically, it can manifest itself through sound, it can manifest, and this is all related to ritual, right? So that means actually you could break down everything we do as being ritualistic, or you can have these sort of grandiose rituals like healing ceremonies, or you could just do something like washing your clothes, which can be ritual. But it's just being, and so for me, one idea of ritual is finding how that exists in our daily life, right? And so the Amazon itself, the rivers in the Amazon, the great Amazon River, also mimics the snake, the way the snake would move. And so again, it's constantly, it's like the multiplicity of how we're seeing things. So years later, I would move upriver to another group called the Ashanaka. And so the Ashanaka believe in the healing of water and their ability to communicate with water. So the Ashanaka are in the rainforest themselves are really known as water healers, which is different than what we were looking at with the Chapibo and the snake. And so they call themselves Vaporadoras, which means they also believe in the transformation of water from one form to another. So the form of water, and then to like a gas, and then to ice. So these physical transformations of how water can exist is also part of the process. Just like as we heal, we have to go through different transformations. And so ultimately, one of the things that I want to show when I come next year for the exhibition, which I'm in the process of now. So I've been looking at this work of ritual in terms of the alchemic processes. And so looking back about how alchemy, one, can be this physical process, which has these chemical transformations, but it can also have the spiritual alchemic process. So our search for this philosopher's stone, our search for this kind of ultimate and holistic version of ourself, which could perhaps, for some people, it means immortality, or perhaps it means just being at peace with the acceptance of these things that we are, and realizing that, you know, the universe just is. So again, the Ashanaka really have this beautiful way of working with water, which I would reference back to these alchemic processes as well. I went to this one community, and this young girl here on the right, she was actually the healer in the community. I think she was maybe 8 when she started, 7 or 8 when she started the process. She's about 12 when I took the picture. But people would go to her in the community, and this process had been passed down from an elder in another community to her. And so the idea is you never know, too, who's going to embody the process, right? It can be passed down, but in this community, it's her. In the other community of Ashanaka, it's this old man, Senor Fermin. And so here she is. She's working with an elder in the community that's been having some problems with pain and arthritic pain, and she's doing this process with the water. And the thing that's important is that she gets the entire community involved. So, for instance, when she goes out and looks for the rocks to heat up the water to change the process from the water to a vapor, she gets the entire community of the youth to go out and collect the rocks with her. And then they build the fire. So this is her assistant here. They build the fire, and then she goes. So the idea too is that it can be an individual person who's creating healing, but then these things expand into kind of larger circles that we heal as a community, and then we can also be part of a collective group of healing, which ultimately goes back to what we are as storytellers, right? So we're talking about a collective story. And when you look back at the collective story, who were the ones that were keeping it? It was the shamans or the healers. This goes on more now, moving to the northern part of Peru. So we're getting more into the mountainous region. And so something they do is they have what's called a mesa, or a table. And so their tables are actually their physical manifestation of their healing. And then what's on those tables is really important. And typically the table will kind of have a cut in half, and half will be land, half will be water, and then the other part will be this sort of spiritual manifestations that exist from that. But there's always some sort of balance that goes on. And here we see the shaman working, and what he's doing is he's taking these perfumes and he's mixing them with a sort of powder form, and then he's shooting it out. So again, he's working with these alchemic processes of taking one form and pushing on to another for the ultimate idea of healing. And every few months he goes out and he has to re-energize his table or his mesa. So he brings it out to the sacred mountains. This would be a sacred part where his lineage coming from the Inca and even before that. And he'll go out and he'll kind of re-energize these objects through the sun. And I'm going to move now to another community in Laos, where I've been working since 2016. And they're really interesting. They're the indigenous people from that region called the Hmong. And something that they've successfully done is so one of my explorations about ritual, and when you take ritual out of its existing landscape. So how does it work when you have people that are being displaced, as we've been since time immemorial, since sort of our, exit from Africa. So we're constantly moving, but how do we speak of a place, right? So a lot of us identify with a certain region, and that's really important. But then what happens when we move to another region? How do we take those rituals and move? And what does that mean? And is the power still there? So does the power exist in the landscape? Does the power exist in the ritual objects? Does the power exist in the people? Does the power exist in belief? Or does the power just exist in the universe? And we have this ability to kind of tap in and sort of harvest that belief. So these are all questions I have when I'm creating these images, and I don't have the answer to them. But these are the questions that are bringing me on this sort of journey. And so the Hmong have a way to enter. So when someone's sick in the community, they believe it as twofold. They believe that the physical body is sick, and therefore you have your sort of Western or Occidental medicine that you can relate to. But because the physical body is sick, therefore part of your spiritual body must be sick as well. And that's where the shaman comes into play. And then again, if we look back at the Chapibo, when you look back at the Shanaka, they're saying very similar things. When you look back at the Chapibo with the idea of the patterns of the snake, it's when in the patterns of our DNA, when these patterns are broken, therefore we're sick, so we need to heal them. So it's a very similar, so then we're starting to see within all these cultures very similar ideas about sickness of the soul and sickness of the physical body. So what they've been doing here, this actual bench is called the horse. So this becomes a horse that they will then take into the spiritual bench in the physical plane, and then they'll begin to ride on it. And as they enter the spiritual world, they come in on a horse. They use, once they get into the spiritual world, they'll use things like a pig. So they'll usually do a slaughter of a pig before, so that they can give an offer to the spirits in the physical world, or in the spiritual world. So these pigs will be slaughtered in the physical world, and then the spirit will be brought in as an offering into the spiritual world. And so often you'll go into a shaman's home, and they'll have the pigs that have helped guide them into the spiritual world hanging on their walls for the entire year. And then at the end of the year, they'll burn these bones or bury these bones, also as a act of reverence and thank you. And once the shaman enters into the other world, they'll cover themselves, because they realize now that they can't be seen anymore, because then it's too dangerous. So they have to cover their faces, because then they don't want the spirits to recognize who they are in their physical presence, because then they can enter out into the physical world. So they cover themselves like this. And so these acts are really important for them. You can see here they'll tie the pig to the people that are getting the healing process. And so they're basically tying the gift that will be given into the spiritual world with the people that are looking to be healed in the physical world. So in this region, men and women are both shamans, and they're both very, very highly regarded shamans. They both have, what you want to say, equal power. And here I noticed that what was important for me, so these acts of what you were seeing, these actually go on quite often. There's certain times of the year that they don't work on the ritual, but 7-8 months of the year, they're constantly in ritual. So you can see these shamanistic acts every weekend almost. So it's not something that just happens once a year. But also within that, so they're often cooking with rice. Rice can be used as offerings, and they're working with this every day. So you also have this daily ritual of honoring the rice that you can see here. And similar to what we heard with the Chapibo, where she's singing the songs, and the Hmong have a song to honor the dead in the same way, and I want us to just hear that really quickly. And I'm just going to go into one more story, and the rest, hopefully, I'll be able to put into the exhibition in the springtime. So the last story, this is a community in the Arctic that I've been working there since 2015. It's a community of Yupik. They would call themselves Yupik Eskimos. And this is in Alaska, in the eastern or the western part of the United States. And they're really important for me. So it's one of the things that we're looking at that when I'm looking at this ritual exploration is region. So I'm really interested in how people interpret the Arctic landscape. We were seeing first in Peru, so we're looking at that sort of South American landscape. We're looking at the Hmong, which you have basically a group of indigenous people that have moved from China, like more north to Laos, Vietnam. Then after the US-Vietnam War, you find them dispersed in France, the United States, and different parts of Europe. And so then we're seeing these indigenous groups that are having huge kind of waves of migrations to different areas. The Yupik, you would have seen perhaps moving with that first wave or the second wave with the Thule culture coming over from the Bering region in Russia, from that direction coming over. So they would have come maybe, looking at 1,000 or 12, 13, 1,400 years ago coming over. And they also did a lot of migration, so going from Alaska back over to Russia and back. So you actually have a Yupik, a very strong Yupik culture on the east coast of Russia as well, where I got to visit for the first time last summer. And so this is really interesting. So their culture mostly works around fish, seal, and walrus. And they have a lot of rituals that go into how they can harvest and harvest their food for the year. But it also goes into, they have this idea of that very similar to places in South America, which we'll get into with other groups, but their actual transition, that they are part animal and they are part human. And in order to have a successful harvest, you must understand all parts of that animal, and that you actually have this ability to sort of transform into these animals, but it's with the most respectful way. So this here we see a young girl, and she's the first year of her period, or the first year that she's getting her menses, and because of that, it's this first year that she comes into a really strong power. And so she'll, in the Yupik culture, she'll cover, if she goes into public, she'll cover her hair, and she actually should be covering all of her arms and her hands. And she does it for an entire year. She can't pick berries, and she can't do any subsistence activity, which would include hunting or fishing. And specifically, she can't eat the king salmon, because the king salmon, which is also called for them the dayakfok, it's the most important animal that will sustain them through all 4 seasons, right? So they can't touch them, because the young woman comes into so much power, and she needs to become, it's not that they want to suppress her power by covering her, but they want her to become comfortable with understanding how much power she actually has and how that translates with her connection to the natural world. So that was important for me to see. And so this is an elder in the community, Sarah, and so she's got these knives that are just made for women. They're called ulus or ulaks, and they're just female knives. And every cut of an ulak is a symbol. So you could actually look at those fish and tell that these are the fish of Sarah Brown. And when she cuts these fish, she's at her fish camp. It's a very specific place where she lived and her father lived and her father lived. And when all the information is getting passed down about how are the salmon running this year, how is this community doing upriver, it's all being transmitted through these different kind of, if you want to say, networks that lead into her fish camp. So again, these rituals all have to do with these connections and networks and cuts and lines. So it's these ideas that symbols are ways that we connect. Here she's cutting a seal. And what's important is the first time that her son will bring back the seal, she'll cut everything up and all that meat will go to the elders first. If there's any left over, then she'll pass to maybe another family that needs it, and then her family can have some. And I was able to see some of these actual death rituals, which are really important for me. And the idea, and I'm seeing this in many other Arctic cultures specifically, you know, that you're sewing with the skin and the fur. And so they always say the idea of when we actually work with the skin of the animals that we're using, those animals are coming back to life. Like the skin is a living form. And so once again, the animal is coming back to life and we are part animal, part person, because now we're wearing the animal. This is the last thing I'll show. So this is a seal hunting dance. So this is a respect, before the young men would go out seal hunting, they would perform these dances as a way to show respect, but also to, if you want to say, show the future of how the hunt is going to go. I don't know why it's not. Let me see if it'll work this way. Sorry guys, I don't know, for some reason the video wasn't showing, but here is the last picture. So this is the young boy doing part of the seal hunting dance. Yeah, so I'm gonna end there, and that's, so I wanna just talk about my word. Andy spoke about mnemonic, which is hers, and so my word is liminal. And the reason it's liminal is that I realized actually in order to exist in ritual, you have to have what's called liminal space. So liminal space is a space of transition. It's a thing that we can create by ritual, and it's a thing that the world can create for us in itself. So when I look at this time of COVID that we're all experiencing it, I look at it as this ultimate collective liminal space, right? Where everything is sort of slowed down and stopped for us to transform and to understand another layer of how we can relate to the world. And so the world, you know, however we want to say it, whether it's politically, socially, environmentally, universally, was able to create this grand liminal space that transmitted throughout throughout our world in this collective way. But on this turn of this, we will see things in a new way and we'll act in a new way. I actually think that we'll just become different or more whole versions of ourselves. So for me, my exploration is through liminality and what that can do to help us to see and hear and become who we're meant to become. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So this is why I don't like you, don't love you, but you are still my favorite photographer. Okay.
And you know why you're my favorite? It's because of that boy right there.
Yeah.
Hello, Erika.
Hello, how are you?
So he's so big and he's so like a fly. I can defend myself from him. Okay.
It definitely looks like your better half.
You think this half? Yeah. Okay. Be nice and be fine. Okay. So, Lynn, are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to we have one more that it's really, really an honor to have you here. So please introduce.
So I assure you it is my honor to be with all of you and to be included in this great experience and experiment as we go forward. I'm going to show you a body of work that is about people living on the autism spectrum. And you know, we sort of conceived of this idea of these three words, liminal, mnemonic, and terrestrial. And but it dawns on me, listening to my friends and colleagues, Andriana and Erika, that these folks are actually the culmination of those two words and two ideas. Because they are also, if I may share the screen, the folks I'm going to introduce you to are also of their own culture. And as Erika said, in the future, however you define that, we are going to be learning new languages that we don't yet understand. And I believe that it is possible that the people that you will meet in this presentation are some of the folks who are the early explorers in this way of being and this way of communicating. People living on the spectrum, the number of people have exploded, especially in the Western world. In the US, it's 1 in 45, 1 in 27 boys. In some parts of Asia, like South Korea, it's 1 in 38. In Serbia, I tried to get the stats, but I couldn't. It's probably 1 in about 200 or 300. But these individuals rarely meet the eye, which is why I chose this as the first image. This is Max. And the fact that he is looking directly is an act of courage for him. And I just want you to know that, because to live in our culture, our international culture of today, as a person on the spectrum who may be non-speaking, they are isolated, and they are maligned, and they are misunderstood. These are folks who need motion, they need connection, which they rarely get. And they experience our world in a sensory way. They experience it completely differently than we may. The idea of eating a certain kind of food might just send them completely into a tantrum because it's so disturbing. But the people I met on this project were extraordinary human beings. They couldn't always share their internal, interior voices and ideas, but you could see how creative they are, how completely singular and unique they are. And I just really fell in love with so many of them. This is Calvin. I probably spent a year visiting Calvin and will continue to do so. At one moment, Calvin will want to isolate and be completely alone. And in the next moment, he will find community here with a friend. He is doing what they call stimming. So people on the spectrum often have this kind of repetitive behavior, which I have actually started to think of as ritual after listening to Erika. I mean, this is ritual. It is their ritual. They feel commanded by their bodies to do these repetitive motions in order to self-soothe, so they can then become calm and come back to baseline. But it's that behavior and that kind of different way of being in the world, you know, asking for some toy on your knees, that create misunderstanding with others. The rate of bullying for folks on the spectrum is super, super high. I didn't meet anyone who hadn't been bullied, beaten up, attacked, called names. And we are doing that. We, the typical people, are doing that to these folks who often can't respond with language as we know it. I also found that there are a number of children I met who are adopted from Eastern European nations who have themselves struggled. And so these children, this child was from Ukraine, and she had actually lived the first 5 years of her life in a crib. And so she was adopted by this American family. And to get to sleep every night, her mom would put her in this very special cocooning kind of attire and just hug her and embrace her until she fell asleep. But she hadn't basically been touched for the first 5 years of her life. Of course, she was adopted into sort of a typical US family, and her siblings were not always that pleased with her. But today, this is a whole intact family who are very close. So often, people on the spectrum, because they may be non-speaking, they can't. It's very frustrating. They can't make their wishes known, and they can become violent. This young man has been violent with his mother on many, many occasions. You see an image of her on her own cell phone that she's holding. These bruises are, it was very common. Her son would beat her up on a routine basis. And finally, she took him off all of his pharmaceuticals and gave him cannabis once a day. And now he is nonviolent. So there are many solutions to some of these kind of conditions and behaviors for people living on the spectrum that can be, very positive. And one of the things is education. Often police will approach a person on the spectrum. They think that they're, high on drugs. And actually the person is autistic. And so this particular program is actually to teach police how not to assume anything, but to address this person as an autistic individual. So the mom of this young boy here taught him, if he ever gets into a problem with the police, what he's supposed to do is probably what you've been seeing everyone do on American television lately, I'm peaceful, don't kill me. I really found that it is the mothers of these young folks who are taking the deep, abiding responsibility to care for them and to protect them in this world, and to find out why is my child on the spectrum? Did I do something? There's a tremendous sense of guilt. And actually, it's probably our environment, the very environment that you saw celebrated in Andriana's work, and the very environment that holds the mystical that you saw in Erika's work. We have poisoned that environment, and so it's now coming back in the lives of children and people who are being affected. And autism is one of the things that is a result of that. So this mom is actually ready to put her child into this scanner because they think that they, in this one program in North Carolina, have found a way to determine early interventions for children on the spectrum that can make a difference in their lives. Another way is to look at the brains. They're looking at the actual brains. So if you are on the spectrum, you pass away, your family can will your brain to this program. There are like 4 centers collecting brains in the US, and they're hoping to find something in the biology and in the actual physiology and chemistry of the brain that will show why autism is so steeply on the rise. So I visited many families, and these are just some of the folks that I met and would like to introduce you to and sensitize you to. Often kids on the spectrum have a very kind of far away look. It's probably because their internal lives, their interior lives are so powerful. That's one of the reasons I'm so interested in Erika's work, because it feels like there's a way to interpret those ritual lives that she has discovered. But in many cases here with children on the spectrum, it's very difficult to understand what they're thinking. And of course, their siblings suffer because of that. The education system for folks on the spectrum is variable. The best that I found were programs that just allowed the child to be themselves. And so this little girl in the window looks like she is going to launch herself into space, which she did a moment later. And learning is going on all around her. But the educators respected her need to be exactly who she is. This is a sensory room. So if a child seems, cannot control their behavior because of what's going on inside of them that they can't communicate, they can go into the sensory room. This is in a school called Celebrate the Children, which is in New Jersey in the US. And so this child can just swing and move and roll and bounce and until their heart's content. And that's how they self-regulate. And then when that time is over, they come out back into the classroom to learn. Technology is very helpful. But many parents have a great fear, just like the mom who was afraid for her life, who had the young woman who had Down syndrome. Parents also, they don't know what to do with their kids after they leave the formal education system. And so this is a program that just gathers young folks together. They're doing yoga here and exercise. And this program says, we know that you have value. We know that you can learn. We know that your mind and your sensory life is actually a gift. And because of that, we're going to find out what you can do. How do you contribute to society? So they've discovered that certain people on the spectrum have such high level acuity that they can know the difference between 2 mammograms at like 65% higher level than a typical person. And so they're developing a program where these young folks can read mammograms for the medical community in that area. There are lots of therapies, many of them abusive, but this one is sonic. And by using these very specific tones and tuning forks and wavelengths, this child was taken from a child who routinely abused herself and would run into the walls and slam her head against a wall to a child who is much more at peace and who is in, school now. So we never know what are those specific ways that people can be helped. So in the autism world, the young adults are unemployed or underemployed in this country at 85%. So, what do you do? Like, you have no purpose. This is part of life. Having purpose is what drives us and gives us energy and meaning. So there are some businesses that use what they call the autism advantage. Actually, people on the spectrum are great employees. Here in Florida, at a place called the Rising Tide Car Wash, they employ virtually, I think probably 90% of their employees are on the spectrum. This young man is just taking a moment. He's, it's all about the senses, and he just loves the feeling of that vacuum on his face. But pretty soon then he went right back to work. So there's a lot more training now. We're all living in the virtual world. This moment is proof. And a lot of training is being done now using these these virtual people, so folks on the spectrum can learn how to interview, which is one of the main kind of stumbling blocks for them to get jobs. One man said to me, "Oh, we hire people with autism to do the 5 Fs: flowers, folding, filing. I forget one F, and filth. They're in those jobs that we don't want to do. But if certain programs are successful, and if we are open-hearted and open-minded, I think that there are so many more people on the spectrum that can be employed, in which case then we have contact with them and we learn about their gifts." This is a mom who developed a program of independent living for people on the spectrum, and she's actually working with her son to learn how to shave. So on the iPad there on the bottom of the frame are all the steps. You put on your headband, you turn on the razor, you do your chin first, you do your cheeks. It's just step by step, and then it becomes a ritual and doable. Survival skills. There's tremendous pride in this population. This is Linda, and she is here in her first apartment ever. And she is like 27. This is her first independent Christmas in her own place. This young lady is working. She's working. Often there is a bit of a problem where some businesses are taking advantage of the high level of cognition and sort of the ability to synthesize information and work with computers. So there is some people are being taken advantage of, but a beginning. And good to see that folks on the spectrum can have work. This is one of the horrible things we're doing to all humans. This kind of, mousetrap office. This is like JP Morgan, big bank. And but this young man on the spectrum who is Muslim is able to pray in his cubicle, and he actually is like completely at peace and loves doing this work. It is perfect for him. You'll notice that there's nothing in his in his file cabinets. There's not a book or a magazine or a photograph or a how-to publication. He simply enters in the morning, he prays, he works, he prays, he works, he prays, he leaves, and all the same the next day. I think the most important thing is to know that at the very darkest side, people on the spectrum and many others who are disabled can be abused and, in fact, killed by caregivers and loved ones. This is a memorial service. There was someone at my back here who was reading the names of those who had lost their lives to violence. The lady in the middle, she believes her husband had drowned her little girl of 7. And I think this person read something like 500 names during this vigil. But there's also the possibility of great life and love. And I think this is the thing to remember and to move forward with and to continue to celebrate. These lovers who I thought, okay, we need to stop the car and they need to get a room because they were just so in love, but they can't drive. And so they were being driven by mom to their date. But this is the work that I would love to continue, and perhaps there's a way to continue that with you all. Thank you.
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
I have some problems with my speakers. Okay. This is really great. Lynn, can I ask you some questions? Vukash asked you how hard it is when you come home after seeing and witnessing all these hard scenes. How hard it is to save your personal mental stability, and is this work affecting your life?
You know, I feel like I am in the presence of people who are courageous every day. And so for me, it's not dark. I mean, I just think that, you know, when, and it's not this project, but many projects, to have seen folks who suffer. You know, I feel like it's such an honor to be in the presence of these individuals and their stories and what they share, and that we have to be ever vigilant not to take advantage of people. And I think all 3 of us are super aware of that. So I don't feel like I take in darkness. I feel like I am witnessing courage. And so that could be just my filter or how I process it. And remember, we are observers. So that's a dangerous middle ground. And I think we have to be super careful not to not take it in, but to not take advantage of others. I don't know if that answers the question, but.
Yeah. Lynn, just one question from me. I had a similar, let me say, not a story, but similar cases when I work with, as an art teacher, I worked with a lot of autistic children. And do you have sometimes a feeling that the kids in front of you have something much more inside them than we have? Because I have an opportunity to work with some children on drawing, you know, and you know, when they start to draw, it's a pure instinct. And one of the colleagues of mine told me, okay, she's only scrabbling how can you teach her to draw? And I told her that I can only hope to be like 10% of her knowledge of line and everything, because every line of hers is something that I probably will never reach, because it's so great and so honest. And I always had the idea that they have some superpower that we just don't understand because of our kind of how we are raised. We cannot understand them.
Yes, that we erase, that we deny.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we need to be more powerful than others. I mean, this is our egos. We're always, I think, as creative people and photographers, fighting that ego, and as a teacher as well. So I think it's easy to see yourself as more highly developed than that individual who can't speak to you. But in fact, you are right. And that's why listening to Erika and Andriana and just thinking about the ways in which these bodies of work resonate with each other, that there is a higher level being in some of these folks. And the fact is that we lack the language. Yeah. We lack it. And we don't know how to understand them or appreciate them. So the little boy, Max, who actually Erika met when she came to do some photography in Pittsburgh, Max has been doing art. His mother is an artist, and he's been doing art. And his art is to put tape on the wall of the room in which he and his brother, he has a brother who's also very highly involved on the spectrum. So he's been creating this room of tape. I'm telling you, it is mind-blowing. And hopefully I will have some of that work to bring when we come to visit. But I always had that feeling that I am the one who is autistic when I'm with them. They don't apply to our social rules, but if you watch them, you will see that they are like sometimes much more in front of us. And I work like with only 5 of them. I just can imagine how many really, really talented kids are there with those problems. Or we understand it like a problem for some reason. Yeah, but it's right. We make it a problem for them. We're the problem.
Yeah.
They are not the problem. Yeah.
Miladin, have one question more, if I can. How did you fight emotions while shooting? Scenes are so strong, emotional, hard to bear. I guess you should have acted detached, not involved. My heart is sinking. Regards, Sandra. Sorry for bad English. Mine.
I mean, that's I would think for all of us, because we're all in the presence of strong human emotion. Isn't that one of the reasons we do this? Yeah. What do you think?
And I had one more. Alexander asked you how many families were involved in this project.
In the autism spectrum?
Yeah.
Oh, oof. You know, maybe I maybe met 30, 40 folks, some families, some individuals, and hope to continue the project. So that's the next challenge, is, you know, how to continue to do the work and to continue it within our triad and our idea of liminal, mnemonic, and terrestrial. Could be interesting.
Okay. Imre asked you, how did you find all of them?
should we all answer that? Because how do you find these people and doing these rituals? I mean, that's like.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think I could answer it two ways. I think, for me, I think it's like, right, that most of these, I really believe most of the stories are already like, they sort of find you in a way as much as you find them. I think it's very collaborative. I don't think you're like necessary. I think if you are open to learning and you're open, yeah, I really think if you're open to learning, like the teachers, which ultimately, which in Lynn's case are these autistic people or children, well, people because they're not young adults, they find them, right? Just like it's all of a sudden, so Lynn becomes, I think, like, and I feel this, and Andy, maybe, like we become the students, we have something to learn, and when we're genuinely open, the teachers sort of arrive. And I think that's the first process of storytelling, is realizing that in order to, a story is about something that you need to learn, and then you ultimately become, you know, it's sort of this journey that it doesn't exist like by itself, right? Like the story only exists because you have the players and you have the audience and you have the storyteller. You have all these different perspectives. That's how a story begins to form. And so therefore, like once one thing, right, it just sort of draws out this other energy. But then I could also imagine within that, right, once you have an idea about something, it's like, let's say you want to find like a peppers, and I don't mean it's silly, but like let's say you want to find some good peppers. You do a little research, find out maybe who grows and sells the best peppers, and you might start there. So it's kind of like that too. I think there's just on the ground sort of research that would be, you know, and then from there, I think when, you know, really hungry for peppers, a pepper's going to find you. That's my way.
Alexander, ask you, Erika, is there any resistance among natives to participate in the project?
I have not had any.
And your approach to work with the people so they can feel natural and forget about the camera, how did you do it?
That's for me?
Yeah, it is for you.
What would that be? So, well, what's the way that they feel natural? Well, I don't really know, right? I think, to be really honest, I can't speak for why anybody's comfortable or not comfortable. I really don't know the answer. All I can say is that I think again, it's like being genuinely, and I don't mean genuine in terms of what anyone else thinks it is. I think for me, being genuinely interested to understand something that I normally would say I perceive that those people have the answer to. And so therefore, it's kind of like you're kind of just, you know, you're just kind of sitting down and listening and like really like you're just kind of kneeling down and so I think there's that aspect to it. And then also, you know, the aspect of really not, you know, you're not, you know, I think Lynn used the word observers. And I think we are observers. But I think, and I really believe this for all of us, all three of us, that we think we're observing with our eyes, but we're not. We're observing with our heart, with our ears, and our eyes are just like, you know, they're the things that we actually have to battle against, I think. Those are, so, and so I think when we, you know, yeah, so I think that's how for me, that's what that's how I'm acting. I don't know why people are comfortable. I don't know. Lynn or Andy, any?
Yeah, I just want to add from what I witnessed working with you. Like Erika gives a lot of time to people to listen, just to listen, the simple act of allowing people to express themselves. And I think it's a natural tendency of people to, when they feel like they're listened to and they're accepted and not judged and just appreciated for who we are, then they open up naturally, and then they the photograph is really a gift of theirs to you. It's not you who is taking that, or it's your talent. I mean, that plays into it as well, but it's really, it comes as a collaboration from this human interaction, and people feel it when you're genuine and when you're there for the right thing, for them and not for your own interest. So I feel like I assist Erika on certain projects, and I can speak to that. She's really giving people the time, and it's just a natural process. People just are there, and whatever is meant to happen, it happens because they're both there for that reason. So there is another layer or dimension to storytelling that plays in even without our intellect coming through, if that makes sense.
And I think Andy used a really interesting word, and for me it's really important, especially for like when we're as photographers, and I'm sorry it's in English, I'm sure, you know, in Serbian and all these languages have their own word, but as photographers, as a group of photographers, we always say we're taking a picture, and I just don't think we are, and I don't think any one of us, any one of the three of us are ever taking a picture. You know, it's a creation, it's an exchange, and it's just a terminology that's used that I think is wrong. And I think that's why we're not taking anything at all. You know, I mean, I'm not saying somebody, you're being given something, and therefore something is being created from it. And I think that's the thing. I mean, you're not, and I think the minute you're taking something is the minute people resist, the minute they turn their back, the minute all these things, like, right? If someone's coming in your house and stealing something versus someone coming in your house genuinely interested to exist in your house, you know, as you know, something like this. But anyway.
Yes, but you know, in this profession, the way we are taught is absolutely the opposite of that. And I think we have all come to this place through our life experience, who you are, your philosophy of life, and but the language of photography is both violent and kind of abusive, and all about acquisition and dehumanizing people. Oh, that's my subject. She's my subject. I just cannot stand that. And I think first we have to change the language that we use, because our language definitely impacts our behavior toward others. So, you know, and that means we have to be mindful of what we're doing, who we are. And I think the energy that you carry into this room, this non-judgmental perspective that Andriana talked about, is energetic as well. And so, you know, when we're going to be now talking about the possibility of this masterclass, and I think it's pretty fair to say that this will be a big part of the discussion. It's not just about the photographs you produce or the idea you bring to the table, but who are you in space? Who are you in relationship to the people that you're photographing and honoring and documenting and, you know, and living with?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. All of these things, right? I mean, if we are, everything we do forms the physical manifestation of what we are doing. So the words that we use, the way our intention, the way we hold the camera, all these things form this physical version of what we're presenting to the world. And they all matter, I think. You know, I mean, as much as anything matters. but yeah, but I mean, they all form the experience that is being created, right? So, yeah.
So we can start discuss about the masterclass. So Erika, if you want to explain, and we can tell the people what we are working on, and tell them about the task we will give them until September.
Does anyone know anything about the masterclass?
Only really, really, really a little. I just told them that we will pick 12 students for the masterclass, nothing more.
Okay. So I'm going to start off. Please, Lynn and Andriana, chime in, or I'll talk a little bit and then hold it over to you. So I'll start to introduce it. Okay, so what we are planning is, because of COVID, right? I think it's created this wonderful opportunity that none of us expected. So we were all supposed to be in Serbia right now, but because of COVID, we're not coming till next year. So as we just said, the three of us will be physically coming to Serbia. We'll be bringing these exhibitions and this space to create this sort of three-thought exhibition. But what we wanted to do was then, between now and then, not just break the cord with Serbia. So we wanted to do is engage in what we're calling this masterclass, but engage with 12 storytellers that are here on this call. You out there, for the possibility to collaborate, work with us, help us learn, hope all of us learn together about, and create a story that ultimately we will have this exhibition, and then the people in the 12 people in the masterclass will also be exhibiting next year with. And so our theme are these three words: mnemonic, liminal, terrestrial. So we're going to be, those are the, Andy, myself, and Lynn have these three. We are going to put those three themes out. And so the 12 storytellers are going to think about one of those words, whenever you're drawn to. And over the year, you're going to create a story under that theme. But that story is very individual to you. We will work as, if you want to say, kind of guides. We're gonna all work together to kind of cultivate those stories over the year, but we really want your story. We want you to choose what that is, what you're interested in, and we're gonna work on that, and then you'll be exhibiting it in June at FOTORAMA Festival 11, right?
Yep.
11. And the way, just technically, and then I'll have Andy and Lynn please chime in, but technically the way it'll work is we're going to do an initial 3-day class. So first I'll say this: between now and September 1st, those that are interested, I want you to write a couple of sentences, 2-3 sentences. You can write it in Serbian and we can translate. If you're welcome to write it in English, that would be helpful as well, whichever one. Translate why you want to partake in this class, and one idea that you're really interested in, the word that you're interested in, and one idea of what you think you want to cover, what you think you want to create, what you want to engage in. That can change over the process, of course, but at least come up with something that's but really in your heart. I do not think any one of us are interested in something that you think is going to be in National Geographic or you think it should be covered. We want to know, like, what is in your heart. And then the possibilities are limitless, right? But what in your heart is really important to you? That's the most important thing, I think. And then, so what we'll do is in September, we'll have a 3-day class where we'll all start working together. We're going to begin becoming one big group of 15 of us, right? 12, 13, 14, yep, 15 of us working together. Maybe we'll let Marco and Lazar, let's see. But, we'll start working together, this 3-day intensive workshop. And then we'll meet 3 more times over the years. And we'll start editing through the work, looking at it. And by next May, we're going to start putting the exhibition together and editing it down. Yeah, can you guys add in Andy and Lynn, please?
I would just encourage the people who are interested to really think about how serious you are. As you can tell, we're pretty serious. So we will be calling your best selves forward, your most creative selves, and challenging people, I think. So I just would say, it can be a great celebration of your talents, your gifts, the way you see the world, and what you care about, because your work will also be exhibited. We will be, by that time, by the end of the year, a family of storytellers. And so, we want people who can sustain that and who can sustain the project that's important to them. And I don't think, it has to be specific. I love what you said, Erika, about, not something that you think is going to end up in any magazine. Just shoot and think about, how do you photograph and what do you care about? And it can be close to your heart and geographically close to you. It can be, across a border of any kind, but just please make it doable in a year.
Yeah, I'll just second that. Like what Lynn said, the thing that we're asking for is, it will take dedication. It doesn't mean that you have to be thinking about it every day, but it is something. This is your opportunity. I think I saw in the chat, somebody said, oh, so it's not like a 20-minute visit. No, this is your chance. This is what we all beg for. For us, not to be with us. No, sorry, not to be with us, but that we beg for we beg for the chance to work on a project for a really long time. That's what I want to say. Sorry, Marco, I know you beg to work with me, but
you are dead. You will come to Serbia, and I will cook you for real.
This is a chance to work on something. You get to dig into this for 8-9 months. So it doesn't mean that, and it will take on different forms and change, but we want it, when Lynn says doable, what we mean is you have to be able to do it. It can't be one trip to Thailand that you can't go back again. So most likely it will be something somewhat local. Sorry, Lynn, you're about to say something?
Yeah, think of it as a commitment. Actually, photographers have a really hard time making a commitment. I don't know what that's about, but we do make commitments to stories. So this is one of those situations that you need to make a commitment to the story, and because we're also making a commitment to each other to be creative at your highest level. I do see a question here about someone. Do you need to be from Serbia? And I don't think so, right?
No,
just
no.
Get there next year. I mean, it's all virtual now. What's your thought, Marco?
Of course not. I just answered her. Everybody can participate, and if they cannot come to Serbia, they can send the files, and we will print it. So it will not be any problem. But I think they maybe can find a way to come to Serbia. I don't think that anybody from here are too distant from Serbia. It's maybe the guys from Japan will come. So if they can come, everybody can. So I think we will make everything possible. But if somebody for some reason can come, we will make everything the same. If they don't need to come at all, so we'll make an exhibition, and we'll find a way for them to participate on the exhibition too. So by the Zoom or somehow they will be part of the exhibition.
Will we also speak about what we'll be covering through these 3 days, Erika?
Yeah, go ahead.
So in the first class, we're thinking to just revise all the foundations of photography, like color, composition, and light. And we are going to look at a collection of images and discuss together why they're good. And the second day, we're thinking to, so you'll have some time to photograph until the next day, and we can go through a feedback session and see what worked and how we can improve those photographs. And then we discuss the elements of a storytelling, what contributes to the elements of a good story, a portrait. You'll have an assignment to make a portrait. And then the third day, we're going to discuss the themes or the thematics that you want to explore for the extension of the year. And then after those 3 days, you'll have a few months until we see what you've produced in a matter of 3 months. I think the first feedback session will be in November, and then another one will be in March, and then the final one will be at the end of May or beginning of June. So we're gonna create the final portfolio for the exhibition. So we'll be in close relationship throughout the year with you. Yeah.
Yeah, just so in like that initial class that we'll hold in September, we'll do just mini exercise to, like, help us review work, and it can be within your theme. It doesn't necessarily, but just more so we can talk about some basics of photography, and then we can also talk about these kind of bigger kind of themes as you get into your project. But that'll just break down some, what do you want to say, some tools of photography that I assume many out there are probably have a lot of these tools, but this can maybe help us refine them, learn something, ask questions, anything. It's really like also a really good time to ask questions that maybe you wouldn't be comfortable in this big group chat to do.
Because photographers tend to work in isolation, and if you're one of those photographers, then we're not necessarily looking at other work or thinking deeply about what you're doing. And so going back to basics can really be helpful. It can help you see your work and your intention in different ways. And we need to learn who you are. So those exercises, though they may seem simple, will help us get to know who you are as a storyteller and a visual communicator.
I just have one question because of my son here. He's asking like 50 times in a minute. Can he try to make some images? I know he is a kid, but I think he will try it. So I just ask for him.
Hello.
So can I tell him that he can try it?
Absolutely. Yes.
You don't have to ask our permission. We would be honored. You don't have to ask our permission. It'd be wonderful.
Thank you very so much, Erika. And Lynn Johnson.
Andy lyssna.
No, sorry, Andy. I don't know why you're here.
And it's in our best interest to make good friends with him, because he's the only one that's gonna like temper Marco when we come to Serbia. So he's our best
No, you're cooked.
So, Augie, you're gonna do this? You're gonna be the masterclass throughout everyone, though? You're gonna join for the whole year? Seriously?
Da li hoćeš da budeš na radionici cijele godine?
Da. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
In.
Yeah, he has an eye, but he's a little lazy. But these 4 days, he was on every workshop, and he doesn't know English at all. But he's like patiently looking everything. So maybe there is hope for him. I don't know. But he asked me to ask you, so I asked you. So he will work, believe me. Because of that, he will work. So he's okay. So one question: where do we send our replays and ideas?
Okay, so yeah, we do need to do that. What we'll do is, Andy, you and I are in the process of making that email. Well, so Marco, here's what we're going to do. Andy and I are going to set up, we're going to actually just set up an email just for the class, for the workshop, like a Google email. And so I'll send that to Marco, and then we'll have it by September 1st. But Marco, why don't you and I discuss this over the weekend? And I'll
no problem.
But everything will be sent to an email. And we don't need to see images. We really want your reason. So it's more some text, but it'll be an email basically.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions more about the project, about the masterclass? Come on, people.
One other thing we should say that they have to dedicate to, and we can work this out, but when we do this initial master class, the initial class, it's like it's probably 3 mornings so it's 3 days. We can probably do it over a weekend, but like a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, but they just have to be available for those days. So we have to figure that out with people's schedules. But that's also something we should present when that weekend's going to be.
Yeah, maybe it would be great to be weekend and afternoon like this, because the people always work like 5 p.m. But Sunday not, but the Saturday they work. So we can maybe put that in review, and I can ask everybody about the time, so everybody can be at the time to the conference. So we will find a way.
We'll organize that. Okay.
I will just say something on Serbian, so everybody can understand. Molim vas ljudi, jedna stvar samo, ima ovdje dosta jako iskusnih fotografa među nama ovdje, ali hoću da vam kažem da je ovo nešto što je jednom u 100 godina, znači da se meni desilo ovakva neka ponuda, evo sad neko pita koliko pare, znači totalno je besplatno sve, da je meni neko ponudio pre 20 godina, ja bi vjerojatno pao u nesvest. Tako da molim vas, iskoristite ovu šansu, radite sa nekim od najboljih dokumentarista sveta, i ono što je bitno, one traže nekoga ko će da se stvarno ko će predano da radi ovo, i verujte mi, vredeće. Znači, raditi godinu dana sa njima je jako, jako velika stvar. Tako da, ako imate još nešto da pitate, sad je vreme.
Mare, imaš još jedno pitanje od Nevena.
Okay, Neven asked, can we continue on the project we're already working on, or does it have to be something new?
Good question. I don't know. What do you, Andy, Lynn, what do you guys think? Should we all start from the same place?
I think if it started, I think it's good to continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe is best. Maybe they can send a few images from the maybe ongoing project, so you can decide, or something like that.
I mean, it's not a competition, so
yeah, of
it's
course.
Like, there's a starting line. So, but maybe that person can decide. Nevin can decide after we have more conversation.
Okay. Christina asks, how proficient in photography do we need to be to enter the project? And do we need to be a professional photographers, or we could be amateurs?
I don't think anyone has to be a professional. What I do think is you really have to be dedicated to working on this and improving over the year. I think it's, for me, Andy and Lynn, please chime in, but I think it's okay to work with different levels. It's really the dedication.
Yeah, I think I just want to say that among Lynn and Erika, I'm the less experienced, and my career is really just starting. So I really want to encourage everybody who has something that they want to explore, something personal or something. It's really, probably that's why I'm in this mix, because I want to encourage you to step forward and be okay with starting somewhere, because that's really what it takes. And it's really an experiment, as Lynn said, and it's an experience, and it's something you're going to learn more about yourself, something about you, something you're going to learn about, something you really care about, and really learn a language through which to express this. So from my perspective, I want to welcome everybody who wants to take on this challenge.
Yeah, I totally agree. I often see in groups of people that folks who are least kind of experienced actually have the more untainted perspective. And so their eyes are still fresh, and they don't have the burden of, like classical teaching and photography, which can actually be a problem. So, it gets in the way. So they're often great teachers themselves, because they remind us of the beginning and when we were open and fresh and clear. So I think all levels should be welcome. But you do know how, whoever it is, you need to know how to use your camera. I think there should be some baseline, like we're
not going to teach like basic camera use.
Yeah, I think you need to make the commitment to use your gear so that you feel proficient at some level coming into the project.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I want to say, it just with this idea of if you're already coming in with a story you've been working on, the one thing I fear is that I don't want something that's so well established that there's nowhere to go. So if I don't want to discourage, but the idea, first of all, we have to think about the 3 themes anyways. We're going to stay under those 3 themes as a starting point. So perhaps if you have a project, it's not, I think if I really want to see this like as a birth of something. So maybe it's something that you've been working on, but you're willing to take on a new kind of root of it. I don't necessarily think we should take a project that's really been created and then edit it and work on it and refine it. I think the idea is to grow and to really just get uncomfortable again photographing. I want, so it can be something you have a bit of a base, but not to take images that you already are really proud of and maybe just take a couple more. Like the idea is the thing that I think is this, is that, we've all been photographing our themes since the beginning of our life. So it's probably not going to be that far off base of the theme that you're interested in anyway. But I really would love someone to take a new seed and plant it in the ground. Just to say that, like, I don't preferably want to see a already almost done project.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyone else?
Maybe the way to think about it is, if you're coming with a body of work because you think it will impress someone, that is the wrong intention. That is an ego-based intention. And so think deeply about why you may want to participate in this, and if that is the right direction. And maybe this body of work is just fledgling right now. As Erika says, it is in seed form, even in and of itself, or there are other directions you can take with it that are surprising. So I think a lot of it's about intention.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Be ready, at least if you're going to tap into liminal, be ready for transformation.
Evil.
Yep. And I'm the easy one in the group. Andy seems all nice. Lynn, maybe, but, and I'm the easy one. You got 2 others that you're going to have to deal with, so. High standards, but at the best level, right? Because we only ask, I think we'll only ask of you guys what we're willing to ask of ourselves, and that's really important too, right? Yeah, Marco, you can add that stuff in so everyone knows the themes.
Yeah, I will send you again all three teams, and Erika will send me the email. So I will again send you all new email about everything, and you will have all information on time. So don't worry. I have all of your emails from this workshop. So I will send you everything everything you need for this. Anybody some other question? Okay. This was a really great time. Thank you so much. I know that this opportunity you gave these young photographers, it's really big, and Erika is correct. If somebody gave me this opportunity 20 years ago, I would like, I don't know, I will go fade down. It's really big stuff. So,
oh, but I meant opportunity to work on a project for a long time. That's what I meant. It just gives you 8 months to focus on something. I meant the gift of time. That's what I meant.
Yeah, but you know, I will kill you, but I love your photography. It's really an honor to work with you, and that's the opportunity that it's not happening every day. So one thing that we are like tradition is, please all of you start your camera for one group photo.
Yes.
Where is Ko?
Dennis. Ah, super.
Ko, start your camera, Ko. Yay! Okay, so cheese. One more. Oh, okay, one more. Cheese. Nice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Really.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you all tomorrow at 10 a.m. Rene Robin and Tips and Tricks. Bye.
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 Pleasure.